1905 was the year that we discovered the first nutrient. So this is a relatively new science. That was discovered by William Fletcher in London. 1928, here in the United States at Cornell, chemists and biologists came together and made it a science. So that's even less time. 1968, arguably one of the smartest people who lived in the last century or so, Linus Pauling created what we spoke about earlier, orthomolecular medicine. But the evil year was 1933, when Merck of Germany created the first synthetic supplement. And I speak about this in my book, Supplements Exposed, which came out the early part of the 21st century. And now over 90% of the nutrients that are on the market worldwide are chemicals, and they are harmful chemicals. Not only do they not supply nutrients that are taken into the cells and utilized in tissue, but they in fact challenge the immune system and weaken overall health of people. So that premise starting, the only supplements we need to be considering if we are at least a little bit sensible would be food-based, uncooked, unprocessed supplements. So I've been doing work on that the same year this gentleman became a vegan I did, 1970.
All right.
Yeah. And it was great. The other night I was speaking in Florida, and I actually spoke about 15 steps from the house I lived in where I literally decided to become vegan. I didn't know what it was, but it sounded good to me, so I became one. So at Hippocrates, I've looked at 17,500 people with very sophisticated tests on nutrient deficiencies, and here's what I've discovered over the last several decades. What is most lacking? Well, one or two of you mentioned B12. After 33 years of looking at this deeply, about 7 out of 10 of you lack B12. I don't want to have you consider that it's only a vegan problem. So I can show you the data that there's an 8% higher incidence of B12 deficiency in animal food consumers. So it's not a vegan problem. And I don't want to be elaborate on this, but it's an intestinal problem, an anatomical problem. We're wildly different than we were several hundred years ago. We don't have the little pocket at the bottom of the large intestine that cultured this bacteria we name B12. It's really not a B vitamin. Number two, selenium, which was mentioned. I can't speak strongly enough about that. It is lacking in all the soils everywhere in the world to get a good source of organic ionic. Ionic means what you'd find in plants itself, electrically charged. There's a dance, a beautiful dance between cells energy and food energy. And that's the food that's really taken up into the cell and utilized as nutrition. And if you just take a normal, non-organic nutrient, mineral, it's not going to work in your body. You're going to get readings in the blood test. It's just floating around in the bloodstream. It's not entering the tissue mass. Iodine, I don't know what happened, but in a way I think there must have been a conspiracy. When they realized how incredibly important iodine was at the beginning of the 20th century, they made it really bad. It's a bad thing, don't take it. But seemingly my grandmother, my mother, and every woman I ever met as a child didn't know that, because if you broke your arm or cut off, they put iodine on it. It's an amazing thing. And the type of iodine that Gabriel and Anna Maria and I, to some smaller level, use is electrically charged iodine. Now, something we talked about, mitochondria, which is an interesting enough story, I'll repeat it. It's when you check mitochondria, it's not human DNA. It's not something that came out of our evolutionary process. So this was a life form or a parasite, for the lack of a better term, that adapted itself to the human body and literally hijacked and took over your cells. You have about 100 trillion cells in your body, and this is in every cell the energy source and, in a way, the mind of the cell. The jet fuel for that is glutathione. I think the most important work that's been done on nutritional science, other than the discovery of phytochemicals, that really took over in 1980s, 1990s, is glutathione. And when we IV that, our medical team IVs that into people, and then we have an oral form now that works, what that does to change people's health And again, I'm used to working with catastrophically ill people and catastrophically sensible people. So either superstar athletes or somebody who's told they have 5 weeks to live. And we watch glutathione as being an important part of that. And some foods have it. Avocado have it in it. Raw asparagus have it in it. Beet greens have it in it. But to do your body justice and to get you back to health again, you need to supplement on that one. I would like to comment on what you said. There's a major difference between cooked vegan diets and a green living food diet by Hippocrates. Looking at 17,000 and a half people, I don't find people on the Hippocrates green sprout diet lacking calcium. This has so much calcium and usable calcium, it's unbelievable. Vitamin D is something, the more I study that, the more impressed I am with it. Vitamin D is really important. We actually make a supplement made out of a vine. It's the only one that in 100% of cases over the last year we've observed it correct vitamin D problems. It's made out of a vine, not lanolin from a sheep or not shiitake mushrooms. I make a protein powder that's based on the protein of a shiitake mushroom to boost the immune system, but it only has minuscule amounts of vitamin D. Another thing I would consider to be incredibly important is proteins that you're getting on an ongoing basis. And one thing they can't screw up in the supplement industry is protein. There's sort of a structure that's easy to replicate. But you can get that from a diet that basically has comprehensive amino acids in it, all the 8 or 9 or 10 essential amino acids that the body requires. And when you look at supplementing with proteins, make sure they're extracts from things like algae. For instance, the B12 we make 100% alive. When we take microscopes and look at it, it's dancing underneath there. We get our methylcyabalamine not out of a chemical laboratory, but out of blue-green algae. And that works wildly different than a methyl that you get out of a laboratory. So that's about what I have to say, but rather than emphasize what vegans are deficient in, I think we'd agree, Doctor, we're the least deficient of anyone, and raw vegans are substantially less deficient in anything than anyone, and B12 is the only thing that people who eat like me really need, although I take 35 raw food supplements a day, because I'm happy being alive.